Hello everyone, so I just wanted to jump on here and make a video because it's been a long time since I've talked about the Bertolottis syndrome. I've had a lot of people asking recently, and I've also had the pleasure and opportunity to talk with some people directly within private phone consultations or I guess just conversations about my experience and kind of the Q&A behind that. So basically I pulled some questions from a few of my last videos, and I wanted to just kind of address some of those questions head on because I think that will really tie everything together. For me, it's been a long time since I've had the surgery, but in the meantime there's been so many changes and so much going on, so it almost seems like time has flown by but moved so slowly at the same time. So a few things I guess to start with is I think one of the reasons why I hadn't made a video directly after the surgery was because it was a bit challenging to navigate the surgery itself, before the surgery, and also after the surgery. So going through the surgery was such a big process, but also not really understanding what it was going to be like both right after the surgery and everything following it. I'll get into more of that soon. And then in recent times, after I kind of recovered from the back surgery, I had a few shoulder dislocations. Also, I had a full ACL knee tear, which I had surgery on that as well. So I do apologize for how long it's taken me to respond, although I was not really aware of what everything was going to entail. So I do feel grateful though now that I can get on here and answer as many questions as I can, and I'm very open to doing that now that my life has kind of calmed down a little bit, for lack of a better way of explaining. So I definitely am trying to prioritize being more active on social media because I've taken some time off of that for a while now, and I feel like I'm at a place where things have finally settled for me, both physically with my back surgery, my knee surgery, and some of my injuries. So I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the questions. I'm going to do my best to not completely jump around and confuse everyone. So of course, if there's more questions after this, even if they were the same questions or anything else I didn't touch on, please let me know so that I can better explain it or even go further into detail. So let's see here. One of the questions was, do I have before and after x-rays of the surgery? I do believe I have both before and after x-rays. I have not pulled them up in recent times, but I do have records of everything. I also have a pretty significant image from post-surgery, which shows the void in my back from where the transverse process was resected from. So when they went and shaved that down, the image shows a large black hole where that bone had filled. So it's pretty interesting because you can see all of the tissues, the muscles, and everything surrounding that area, and then truly just a gap, which was extremely shocking to me and is very obvious given that a bone was in that position, but I didn't realize that I guess I was naive to the fact that you take a bone out of that place, you do not have muscle growth or muscle development within that area. So to get into that a little bit deeper, basically that was something that I struggled with, was redeveloping the muscle in that area appropriately and really centralizing my training and my recovery to be specific to that area. So that was one thing with any type of endurance style training or really lifting or my physical therapy or anything highly repetitive. That side of my back would very quickly fatigue before my other side, so that I had to really play into that and keep that in mind. I couldn't, even though maybe I was feeling less pain or I was feeling like I had the capability of doing something, I would start to get into the movement or into the sport or into the hike and could not go any longer than that left side low lumbar quadrant could handle, which was pretty apparent given that once it fatigued in that area, it was almost unusable, obviously, until the muscle built back up again. I guess the muscle building process, as many people know and understand, takes a very, very long time. With my particular case, I had a background in training and doing my physical therapy and all of that stuff to where it came easier to me and I kind of understood the process and understood what was going on. I think for those that don't realize the speed of healing and muscle growth, it might be a little bit scary or even cause pain and discomfort when you feel like it should be fixed, it should be healed. So that was something I really had to wrap my head around. And also one thing which I believe was a question, I had scar tissue buildup in that area after the surgery, which was common and normal, although with my scar tissue, and this happens with a lot of types of surgeries, and I knew that it was probably going to be an issue. When they did the surgery, they had multiple layers of sutures, and obviously there's multiple layers that they cut into when they go in and do a deep surgery like that. So one thing that happened was when that area had scarred, basically it really kind of sucked down deep and the scar tissue built up and was very tight and thick. I knew that that was most likely going to happen, so when that process of healing began to tighten up, I really went through and did manual massage to it as much as I could after the incision had healed. And then I had some incredible people help me with my manual massage therapy after the surgery, because my biggest things were pushing the muscle back down and getting the muscle to relax back into that area as much as it could naturally. Also, when I was rebuilding that area with the muscle, a lot of that tightened up. My low back was extremely tight most of the time, especially with compensation, stuff like that, not having mobility in my hips and my low back because of the incision healing process, and also just having a fresh surgery, everything really tightens and locks up. So all of that manual work and mobilization was very, very specific to that area, because I don't know what it would have been like, or I don't know what I would have done without that being a part of my recovery. With the scar tissue itself, we went in and really were deliberately breaking up the scar tissue. With that being said, though, I still had issues with the scarification. So when the scar tissue got so built up and thick, during that time was right when I started to begin lifting and training again. I would say that it's very natural for this to happen. I don't believe that I rushed any of my physical therapy or rushed any of my training per se. I think that it was just kind of the way that it happened to work, where my scar tissue got really tight. I had gone through certain ranges of motion, and the scar tissue either separated or detached or tore. It could have been a number of things, but when that had happened, it almost had felt like I went through the surgery process again. So I was starting to make a lot of big gains and recover from the surgery. I was still in a lot of pain, but I had more capability and I had more strength and muscle growth and movement again back into my body. So with all of those things and being an athlete, making the choice to train and do that, I kind of knew that I was possibly at risk for something like that. So when that had happened, the scar tissue area, nothing from a topical level had happened, but subdermally, the area felt like it was a deep burning sensation and just excruciating pain. It did feel like I had the surgery all over again, like I had started from the beginning process of those initial very sensitive healing stages. So that was very shocking to me. At the time, I had reached out to my surgeon and I said, this is what I was doing, this is what happened, what are your thoughts, what are your opinions? She kind of explained everything to me, and then from there she said, if you feel that you need to, we can always get you in for more imaging to see if anything had happened or anything like that. So she had kind of guided me through the process, and I made the conscious decision to wait and see how it would heal and recover. And I continued to do my tissue breakdown and my manual work and all of that stuff, my manual massage, and it did end up just being as a normal healing process would be. So unfortunately, that did set me back a little bit. I could try to think of when that happened in the history of, I guess, the timeline from surgery, starting into recovery, re-injuring it essentially, or re-tearing that, and then what that healing process was like. But at this time, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'll jump over to some other questions, but again, with everything that I'm talking about, I can absolutely get into further detail. I just don't know exactly what everyone is looking for with these specific questions, so I would love to try to answer them the best I can. Am I normal now after surgery? I would say yes. I would say I feel very normal. I would say I'm probably better now after my surgery than I could have A, ever been, and B, ever had felt before. I never really felt normal, and I can go very, very deep into that, but basically all of my symptoms and the issues I was having with my back surgery had been a part of my life for a long time. So I struggled hugely with that for a very long time. A couple things that are significant to me was when I had my initial discomfort of realizing something's not right in my body. I didn't really even relate it to my back at all. Some of my previous symptoms had actually been with GI discomfort and GI irregularity. So basically, from a very young age, I had a very hard time, whether that was, feeling overly constipated, or whether it being the opposite of that, where I would just constantly be in the bathroom all of the time. I did not know what that was from. I got an upper and lower endoscopy and colonoscopy. I had done blood tests. I had done scans and imaging. I had done fecal matter tests. I had done anything and everything that you could think of to try to diagnose what was going on with my stomach. And it was almost out of control. So I got several diagnoses of like an IBS type symptom, or anything that can relate to that kind of like unknown IBS, like just upset all the time, not really understanding why. And then a lot of people had said, oh, it's stress related, or oh, it's X, Y, and Z related, or that sort of thing. So early on, that's kind of what led me down the path of figuring out all of my nutritional background, was because it was directly related to all of the issues I was having with my GI. So the reason that comes into play is because, come to find out, with this back surgery, the bone growth and the entirety of that situation was compressing my GI nerve bundle, and this was something that we didn't really even recognize right off of the bat, but basically that was causing a lot of issues directly with my stomach, esophagus, all of this stuff that was really, really disrupted. Right after I had the surgery, after the anesthesia had gone and the pain medication was out of my system and all of that stuff, I had completely regular movements. I had completely regular digestion. Everything was extremely normal, and that was probably the first time in my young adult or even adolescent life where that was normal. So that was something that we talked about afterwards, and really just making the correlation there, and I've never really had problems since. So that was huge for me and wildly significant, because I did not recognize, I thought they were two different things, when in reality that was one of the biggest, best changes for me that I didn't even know would come from having this surgery. So that was very, very huge for me. Obviously, I had a lot of the regular symptoms like many of you have, with just chronic pain, severe discomfort. I struggled so much with managing my mood and trying not to fall into a depressive state because of chronic pain. I really truly know and understand how much chronic pain affects a person, affects the will and the desire to do things, the things you love, your hobbies, stuff like that. And that was something I absolutely battled with and tried to manage. luckily, I have hobbies. I have so many things that make me happy and joyful, outside of movement and outside of personal training or physical training or competitive atmospheres. But I would definitely say that imbalance, of just getting your physical body taken away, even though I had all of that stuff, it didn't it still wasn't enough. For me, I have always been a very, very, very active person. I had always been a competitive athlete. At the time, I was a competitive athlete, heavily training. In the midst of it all, I was applying for wildland and structural departments for firefighting. I was doing all sorts of these things, and also trying to do all of that while managing this chronic pain. So I can go into deep depths about that and what that experience was like for me, which lasted a very, very long time. This wasn't like a couple months of chronic pain and then, getting the surgery and feeling all better. It was very much like having severe pain most of my young adult life, and then having this kind of pinnacle peak of something's not right and I can't take the pain anymore, and then going through the entire process of what is this, who should I talk to, how do I address it, and what all of that's going to look like. Has it been done before? Have people successfully recovered from it? All of that. So I would say most of my upbringing and most of my young adult life, I was very, very uncomfortable in that lumbar region, and then that had translated to all other things because of compensation, because of lack of mobility, because of pain, this GI discomfort. So I definitely would say quality of life for me now is more than 1,000 times better than I thought it could ever have been with it. So obviously these are all just my opinions and my thoughts. Every person is different. Every Bertolottis syndrome is different, and just whether it's articulating, whether it's large, whether it's sacralized, whether it's your body structure, past or previous injuries or surgeries that would have affected blah blah blah, like all of this stuff is just personal to me. So someone may get the surgery and not have the same experience and be in more pain, or not have a successful outcome, or maybe it would have even more of a successful outcome than me. I'm not sure. But I would say I am more normal now than I ever had been. And then also something to note is that personally for me, after the surgery, I was able to accomplish so much more than I would have ever been able to. I truly mean that. So that's something that is very important for me to recognize and to share, is that I made this scary decision. I did not know what the outcome was going to be, and neither do you. So anyone going through surgery, no surgeries are the same, no surgeons are the same. Stuff happens, things can happen, but with my personal decision and my personal journey, I made that choice. It was an arduous process. It was very, very hard to recover from that, and it took a very long time, and it was up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. I can say now, though, that even with that, and also even with my knee surgery and even with my shoulder dislocations, I can absolutely say that because I had that surgery, I have become a better athlete. I have become more competitive in my fields. I have been able to, I don't even know if quadruple or, whatever, 10x, all of my goals. I have been able to accomplish more now than I could have, having kept that bone in my body. And I think that it took maybe more effort on my end to make sure that I was going to get back to a place of that. I think that someone could easily get the surgery and get out of pain a little bit and, feel limited or feel like they hit a wall and now they don't want to try to figure out what's going on after the surgery, and then they're not progressing. I think that there's so many things that can happen with all surgeries like that. So I definitely know that with my experience, I made it a point to be completely pain-free afterwards, completely crush any of my previous goals, or PRs, or whatever it is that I was doing at the time. I made sure that all of my favorite hobbies were going to be pain-free. And so when I say that, that means addressing the pain that you have. So if you have the surgery, something's not correct, there may be another reason why you still have pain. It may not be directly related to the surgery. It may be because your, SI joints had separated or became weak. Your hips might not be correct. Your posture, your stance, your form, your whatever the case may be, going through that process of, hey, something's still not right. I did what I was supposed to do with my surgery, but now I'm really going to deep dive into why and how all of this is working. I think with my back surgery, there was so much compensation to where everything, my whole body was just jacked around for a really long time. So that's just something to recognize, is that getting the surgery or getting a surgery when you're an athlete, or if you're not an athlete, a human being, you may have complications or you may have more work to do after the fact because of the way that your body responds to the surgery. So these are just all things to keep in mind. And I have the luxury of talking about that stuff because I coach people all the time, every day. I've had the opportunity to work with so many athletes that have had surgeries, that have had injuries, that have had all these things come up. I've had the opportunity myself to experience firsthand what it all requires and what it takes to get back to being competitive after such big, abrupt changes with your body. So these are all things to just think about, but I do say that it's completely worth it. And there are people out there that can help guide you through the process. And if something's not correct after the surgery, continue to try to find those people that can truly assist you with working with your individual case to make sure that the surgery was what you needed it to be. So moving on to some other questions. Can I still lift weights before and after? What was that like? So I can still lift weights. I lift weights better now. Before and after. Before, I really was not performing to a complete level. So before the surgery, a few things to note. That's one thing that led me down my path of training and my certifications and all of my form-specific work was I was in so much pain that I thought I must be doing something wrong. So I went down that path and thought, I can fix this. I can fix it myself. I can learn, I can educate myself, and I can come back and be pain-free. Like, it must be something I'm doing. So going through that whole process and still being in pain, I was very, very confused. And this was well before I even figured out that Bertolottis syndrome was a thing, and then even B, that I had it, or that there was even a bone in my body that was enlarged. So I think with that, in my training and in my form work, before I even knew what was going on, I was very confused because I was not able to hit full depth, and I had extremely poor mobility. So I had worked for several months, I don't even know how long, directly addressing form specific training and deep stretching, mobilization, all of this stuff. And I still had pain in that very specific area, L4, L5, S1, like kind of the lumbar region. So if my spine was here, it was basically just in this pocket right there. So if this is like my iliac crest, right in that pocket, kind of where one may feel a little bit more of like sciatic nerve, kind of like right over, but closer to the spine. So that was something I thought was, wow, I've got really bad sciatic nerve pain. And having addressed that and trying to go through that whole process, again, still in pain, not understanding why. There was a time when I was going to get one of my certifications, and one of the trainers that was giving me my certification had said, that's so odd. Your left side erector is so much higher than your right side erector. And I thought, oh yeah, I probably overtrained my left side before I knew what I was doing. I was a young athlete, just kind of going blindly, and I probably was just left side dominant and didn't realize. Nobody told me, I didn't know. And over and over and over and over and over again, time after time, I tried to develop my right side to meet my left side. It just could not get developed enough to meet my left side. The reason for that was I did not recognize, but the bone in my back was pushing up my left side erector to where everything was now raised, and it created a visible imbalance. Was there necessarily a strength imbalance? No. I mean, yes, because like the bone was in there and that was affecting a lot of other things, but directly with those muscle groups, was there a massive strength imbalance? No. So visually, it looked as if I was wildly left side dominant, my right side was way underdeveloped, but truly what was happening was all of that was pushed up, and it caused that muscle to be really kind of squished, and that's how that muscle ended up developing, because the bone was there. So at the time, I had no idea. I had this false narrative in my head of what was happening, how my muscles were developing, maybe I was training improperly, all of this stuff. So come to find out, that was not the case. It was very, very shocking to me, and it changed the way that I was addressing a lot of my training. So I definitely can still lift weights. I lift more weight, heavier, for longer reps, longer endurance now than I ever have been before. I had never, ever, not once was able to do a full depth squat under a load when I had the bone in my body before surgery. I now am at full depth and well below depth without pain under massive loading. I don't struggle with anything mobility any longer. All of this stuff, though, was very, very deliberate for me, and so it took great amounts of work to get back to this place. So I would definitely say it is so much better quality of life now than it could have ever been. One thing to note is that when I went in for my surgery, we had long discussions and many imaging done to figure out if they were going to fuse that area or if they were going to run rods or pins or anything in that area. That was something that I was not open to. I knew that if I was going to be fused or had rods or pins, that I most likely would get a lot of my mobility taken away. And at the time, that was the beginning of my career, with training, with the gym, with my body, seeing its capability, and then having these big physical goals. So I was not interested in the possibility of being immobilized because of lack of flexion in my back, with a rod being in there, with a pin, with having anything mechanical in my body, because I was afraid of rejection, to where the objects may have been rejected, to where the healing process may have gone wrong. All of this stuff I was not willing to even think about doing. So that's just something significant to me. Was I don't know how everyone in the surgery center felt about me verbalizing that and being so specific with what I was and was not okay with. But I can say right now, for my personal self, that it was the correct decision and that it was truly the best option for me. I don't know if it would be the best option for everyone, because I think it took a large amount of work to try to restabilize my back and restabilize my spine without anything in there doing it for me. So I think a big issue is that when the spine is so unstable like that and doesn't have the supporting muscle groups, you're at greater risk for disc bulging or herniation. You're at greater risk for disc degeneration. All of these things that may have come from me making that decision, and that was a risk I was willing to take, because personally I would have been okay making that choice, and then if I had to go back in and do something secondarily, I would have done that. Luckily, I don't have those issues, and ever since I've gotten checked out again, my disc degeneration, everything is healthy. I haven't had any major back issues or bulging, herniation, anything like that. Yes, have I had muscle strains? At times, yes. I think that's been a very long process, because I have pushed so hard in some very interesting movements, whether that be just being, dumb and trying to move something heavy by myself, or whether that be in training, pushing too hard, or really testing my capabilities and figuring out where my limitations are. So that's kind of my own personal journey, but I have not had major damage to the spine or anything like that since. Who was my surgeon? I had Dr. Tiffany G with Cedars-Sinai. That was in Los Angeles, California. I have had the pleasure of talking to some amazing people who have also gotten imaging done, consultations done, potential surgeries, surgeries getting scheduled, all of this stuff. So I know that they have so many other resources and surgeons that they've talked to, that some are willing to do the surgery, some are not willing to do the surgery. Many people have said multiple different things with their experiences with different doctors and diagnoses with trying to even get help or trying to get the right surgery for their situation. So I know that that can be incredibly confusing and stressful and draining and depressing. I do strongly encourage getting as many opinions as you can and being informed and making a smart decision on your own through as much information as you can acquire, which may be a long process. With my surgery, once I had the diagnosis of the Bertolottis syndrome, I did not get the surgery right away. It was a very long process, and that's kind of what led me down the path of actually, preparing for the surgery appropriately and making sure that I had all my ducks in a row and that some things were figured out with who was going to be operating on me, how it was going to be done, and what the recovery process was going to look like as well. So that's just something to remember, is that for me too, it was not a fast process. So during the time when I had my diagnosis and then all the way up until my surgery, I had to do a lot of things to try to keep myself out of pain. So I did several different forms of therapy. I did some topical stuff. I did injections, all sorts of things. So if you want me to go deeper into that, I certainly can. I think that's probably a video of its own because this one has become so lengthy. But I would say that's a really big deal, was pain management for me. And it truly, I would say, never did I ever get the pain managed, but I can definitely say, there were things that worked better than others, although there was always pain there, and there was definitely days where it was excruciating and days where it was less painful. So just some things to think about with that. Please let me know if you have any more questions, and I will do another video on that if we need it. How am I doing now? Fantastic, thanks for asking. Strength training without worsening. So that's definitely something to please comment below and let me know if you would like me to do a strength training workout without worsening to build back muscles for pre-op and post-op. That will take me a little bit longer because I want to make sure that would be a well-rounded program. Again, everyone is different, so if I were to make something like that, I can't guarantee that things will, help you, or if it will make it feel worse. So I can put together something if you'd like, but of course, everybody's going to be different. So my situation was very different, and it even varied day to day. So sometimes I planned to train and I just couldn't, and it was devastating. I also do have a journal from that time and a training log from my time when I had the diagnosis, and it's very hard to read through it because just the recognition that it was so depressing and devastating to not be able to hit my training goals at that time. I can talk more about training specifically as an athlete, pre and post-op Bertolottis stuff, which please let me know again if I can do more stuff like that, and I will. I had some really, really interesting training and experiences with running. I had some really, really interesting experiences with my SI joints, and how I chose to manage that and go about that. So please let me know. I can get into great, great detail, both pre and post surgery, and what training looked like for me. Do I have pain post back surgery? No, I don't. One thing is, right after back surgery, obviously it was extremely painful. Then there was a time, when my low back was very tight and I could not get it to really relax or release. So that was also painful for several other reasons, but not directly related to the surgery spot itself. One thing that I have recognized, which only comes up ever so often, and I don't know if it is, personally, I feel that it is related to that area. I don't know. When they had done the surgery, the transverse process image, once it was taken out, there was a kind of a bony protrusion from the transverse process. So basically they just took the vertebrae, and instead of the transverse process looking large, they shaved it down to where it looked just like the other side. One piece of my transverse process on the surgery side seemed to me a bit sharper, and there was a small corner where it was seeming to be sharper. Is that causing a little bit of like pinpoint pain ever so slightly every once in a while? It does, but I also don't know. I had asked and addressed that. Some people said that it was not the case, that it probably wouldn't cause issues. I really truly never feel it, except for if I'm laying straight down flat on my back and then I'm twisted to that left side and I arch a little bit, and if I'm laying on something hard, when I come up out of that position, it kind of has like a slight pinch, and it's a little bit like I have to slowly kind of get out of that position. Other than that, I have zero problems at all. And that's now. It took me a very long time to get to this place where I'm in zero pain and zero problems. We can talk more about the fatiguing of that area, before and after surgery, when I talk about my training video. So let me know. I can kind of give you an idea of how it all went down for me and what the recovery was like from a training perspective. We talked about the scar tissue buildup. My outside hobbies, they were affected by it. Pre and post surgery, I can talk about what it was like riding horses. Pre-surgery, extremely, extremely painful. Post-surgery, extremely, extremely painful, given the way that my hips were, and then learning how to go through that healing process of the impact and the abrupt movement, and also the position of my hips, and the fatigue, and the overall pain and control. So there's something, we can dive into that if you ride horses, or if you're an endurance runner, endurance racer, mountain biking, like it would all probably be a bit similar. I do a lot of mountain biking as well, and then getting back into mountain biking also, that was very, very challenging and very interesting. We can talk more about that. Let's see here. Back pain, sacralization. So, yeah, I did have sacralization on mine. I'm not sure what I can say more about that. Not everybody has sacralization. Some has more than less. so I can try to better answer that if I can get a more clarified question. And we can talk more about sacralization and all that stuff. I'm very, very, very open to talking about the mental side of things, the mental state with the depression. And I do so deeply feel for those that have this. I also am sorry that it is painful and a struggle, and it can be very hard to navigate on your own, or navigate with your family and your friends. It's very emotional, so please let me know if I can talk about any of that anymore and what my experience was. Here's a good question. What back braces did I wear? I had several kinds for different reasons, for different things I was doing and what I was and wasn't okay with. There were times when I just pretty much wore a back brace like consistently because the pain was so bad and I couldn't take it anymore. I have several. I can send you guys links to some back braces I've used and why I've used them. So maybe I could type something out to help better guide you. I even did sometimes I would double and triple down on back braces. It sounds totally bizarre, but it was just the right amount of support to help. There would be times when I couldn't wear a full back brace, so I had to do a different type of back brace, or whatever. And also how my back bracing played into my pre and post. I was very strategic with my back bracing when I was recovering, how I was recovering, within my training cycles, when I was riding horses, when I would and wouldn't wear back bracing. So I could go down a rabbit hole with that, because I do think that if you're going to have the surgery, to strategically have back bracing after the fact would be very, very beneficial. I say that with caution, because would I want someone to have the surgery and then just throw on a back brace and live in a back brace? No, because that's not the objective of having the surgery. So I would say there is a time and a place and a reason for that, which I'm more than happy to explain in greater depth. I definitely can talk about some pain management stuff that I personally did. I've got a bunch of tips and tricks, and also different gadgets and things that you can buy if you want to, or topical, or injections, or whatever the case may be. I can talk about different therapies that I did, like swimming, different stuff like that, whether, how that was with my pre and post. Training yogas, I can talk about that, what yoga was like, so I can really get into greater depth with all sorts of things. I can talk about some of the therapies and resources that I was offered after my training, and I've got some great people that have more information on that, and if that could be right for you, whether that be helping the healing process, helping with the manual massage, helping with any nerve issues, stuff like that, like pain with the SI joints. I definitely have some great resources for physical therapy. So please, if you need help, let me know, and I would love to try to connect you with as many amazing people as I can. Let's see here. I'm trying to just make sure I got everything on this quick video before I say goodbye. I would absolutely say that, just as a general rule of thumb, movement can heal so many things. So obviously pre-surgery, it's so hard because movement may seem like it is hurting you, which that very well is the case, could be the case. For me, there was certain things that I absolutely could not do, but I would say both pre-surgery and post-surgery, finding movement and finding things where you can still use your body is so important, not only for just the body, but also for your mind and your mental health during those times, and just making sure that you're trying to stay healthy even though you're very limited. So getting your heart rate up, getting that dopamine, serotonin balance, getting out. Sometimes the body becomes painful when you stop moving, and so it may be misconstrued as, I'm painful because I had the back surgery, or I'm painful because I was injured, or painful because of this. So sometimes the healing process does need movement, but it may just be the correct movement for you and your current situation and current time of healing. One good question that I want to touch on, is it common for the diagnosis to be misdiagnosed or completely passed over? I would say yes, because there's so many people that I've talked to that had been told, no, you don't have it, you don't have it, you don't have it, you don't have it, and then one person says, yeah, you've got it, it's right there. Like, took a different image, tried a different position, like all of this stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, that's fully sacralized, or wow, that's rubbing with the hip, or like, yeah, no wonder you're in pain. So that's the hard part, is that trying to figure out if you do have it or don't have it, and then trying to figure out everyone's different opinions on how you should go about addressing it, and also if it is or is not causing you the most pain. There are so many reasons that you may have pain in that area, even though you have, say, quote-unquote, Bertolottis syndrome. It may be coming from the SI joints, and that may not be affecting you. So there's so many things. So finding someone that's willing to work with you to figure out where the pain is actually coming from and how you should best address it, so that you're not making a mistake and doing something more invasive than you should be doing. So I know that's confusing and complicated, but I would say that that's very important, just because you wouldn't want to go in and have a surgery and then, have more surgeries and more surgeries and more surgeries. So advantage and disadvantage after post-op, so many. For the most part, I would say they were all advantages. Disadvantage, it takes a very long time to recover. For me personally, to get back to a place where I felt comfortable, and to where I could be competitive again. And definitely highs and lows. Like, the mental side of it is probably the disadvantage. So there's so many advantages, though, in my opinion, for my specific case. I can't stress that enough. I can totally go more into depth with anything. Please ask specific questions, and I would love to touch on any disadvantages or advantages. Again, all my opinion. Talk to a medical professional. This is just specific to me. And then the final question, I guess, is shaving down the transverse process, and what does that do, and how does that affect the pain? So for me, shaving down the transverse process, basically it's no longer sacralized, and then also there's no longer that articulation between the transverse process and the top of the hip. So I don't any longer have a pseudo-articulation. So I'm no longer using that as a pressure point on my body. It's just as if it's a regular vertebrae now. And then my hips are able to do completely their own things without having something in the way. So I don't know if that answers that question appropriately, but it took away the pain. It helped with decompressing the GI nerve bundle, which helped with all of my GI problems, and it helped me get into a deeper mobilized state, because I wasn't able to get deep into my squat, for instance, or even my deadlift position, because my hip and the bone was directly pressing on each other, and so that physically hindered my mobility and my capability of getting into anything deeper. So hopefully I answered that well, but if I need to, I can try to explain it in a different way also. So I do really apologize that this has taken so long. It is just the way that it's gone for me, is that it's been a very, very long process, a bit chaotic with some other injuries and surgeries along the way, but seriously, I would really love to help as much as I can. I feel that, if I can just talk to someone or talk through it with someone, I am willing and open to doing that if the case is correct to where I can actually serve you. So please let me know. Thank you for being patient with me, and I will absolutely try to quickly address some questions. If you can ask some specific things directly, I will jump on here and make shorter videos trying to address those specific questions. Good luck to everybody. I commend you for going through the process and wanting to be pain-free. It's I think the best way of looking at life is you shouldn't be in pain. So good luck.